So, for the record, today's conversation, today's Wheel of Time rant is going to trigger some people. If you are easily triggered, you've been warned. If you can have an adult conversation, awesome. Because today we're going to be talking about something that I didn't even realize was a thing until I went to go do my reread of The Wheel of Time, starting with New Spring recently, ahead of season 2 of The Wheel of Time on Amazon, and found out that apparently some people believe that Robert Jordan had a spanking kink and that he was somehow into S&M because his books portray spanking and what? There's a guy on TikTok, the cowboy hat. What? Like, that's literally what I'm just sitting here going, what? So I have been going through the internet looking at different points of view, and I think most of these people are way off their rocker. We're going to be talking about this today. If you're a returning viewer, you know, of course, that I like to have good conversations about sometimes controversial topics. So, welcome back. If you are a new viewer, strap in. This is called a rant, but it's mostly just a discussion video. And if you like what you see here today, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. And like all of these people, support the channel, which we can talk more about at the end if you're someone who can financially contribute to keep me on the air. In the meantime, let's dive into this. This is one of several articles that I found about this supposed sexism in Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time. And I guess, I'm 42 as of this recording. I am Generation X. I'm at the tail end of Generation X. I'm too old to be a millennial, but I am at the end of the Generation X, born in 1980. And I grew up in a world of corporal punishment. That is a foreign concept to many people. But I did grow up I can vividly remember one example of this. I went to a private Christian school when I was a kid. I was probably 7 years old when this happened, like first, second grade, something like that. And I remember me and some other boys my age were chasing girls around that age, and we were all playing tag and stuff. And one of the girls, who we all kind of had a crush on because she was the pretty one, um, was running, and we were running, and they were all running, and the girls went and hid in the girls' bathroom. And I was the leader of that pack, and we kind of were pushing on the girls' bathroom door, young boys being boys, and pushed a little too hard, and the door opened and hit her in the face and knocked one of her teeth out. Now, it was one of her teeth that was already loose. This was an established fact after the fact. The unfortunate reality was this was the principal's niece. The principal, who was also the pastor, and his daughter was a teacher at the school. This was her daughter, so it was his niece, or granddaughter, sorry. It was his granddaughter, not niece, my bad. Anyway, his granddaughter. And in any case, I got taken to the principal's office along with the other boys, and we all got, I don't even remember now, 10 or 15 spankings with a big wooden plank. And then that got reported to my dad, and I got home and I got spanked again by my dad with a big wooden plank. That sounds like a foreign concept to some people. Child abuse, some would say in today's era. I don't necessarily disagree. It certainly felt abusive to me at the time, and I didn't appreciate it at all. But it was corporal punishment. There was nothing sexual about that. It was just I got spanked for being naughty. I think that in some cases it might be okay to spank a kid. It's going to depend on the situation. I don't necessarily think you need to spank a kid 10 to 15 times, and I definitely don't think the kid needs to be spanked again when he goes home and his dad does it to him. But I did learn a very valuable lesson that day, which has carried through my entire life with me, which is this: don't ever, don't ever push a door in someone's face. And that memory has stuck with me. Now, Robert Jordan grew up a couple generations before me. He was quite a bit older than I am. And maybe one generation above me, but my dad's generation was much more physically abused, if you want to use that word, but they were much more physically punished than my generation was, in the sense that they got the crap beat out of them. And the generation before that was even harder on their kids, and so on and so forth, going back. The idea that Robert Jordan's corporal punishment could ever be considered anything other than corporal punishment blows my mind. It blows my mind that people will sexualize something that, in my mind, is never meant to be sexual in the first place. But that's my interpretation. I'm not denying that people are allowed to have their interpretations. I'm saying that I've never interpreted the spanking element of the Wheel of Time to be sexual. You have in the White Tower, spanking is used as a form of corporal punishment. Okay. But what this woman is referring to here is these instances, and she only picks a handful out of the entire series, which she uses. She kind of cherry picks her data to say, you know, that somehow Robert Jordan said it was okay to hit a woman and did so in a way that could be interpreted as sexual. And the one that makes me laugh is this instance where, and I remember this, Fail and Perrin are having a fight. She starts the fight. She hits him, and he tells her, "I asked you, not to do that," and she did it again. And it says, with a snarl, he seized her by the scuff of her neck and dot 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 dot. He doesn't actually explicitly ever explain the spanking scene. It just says that she didn't appear angry with him any longer. That made him nervous. She only stared at him, her dark eyes glistening with unshed tears, which made him feel guilty, which in turn made him feel angry. Why should he be guilty? Was he supposed to stand there and let her hit him to her heart's content? She had mounted Swallow and sat there, very stiff-backed, refusing to sit gingerly while staring at him with an unreadable expression. It made him very nervous. He almost wished she had pulled a knife. Almost. I don't know where this individual who wrote this is interpreting that to be sexual. I read this and I see an example of an abusive woman who hit the man twice, and he finally had enough and he defended himself and he hit her back. Now, whether he face slapped her or spanked her, this is the trigger component, ladies and gentlemen, because everyone's like, I very much am in the camp of like Bill Burr. I like this idea that you're never allowed to hit a woman. Like, I'm not saying that you should hit a woman, but I'm saying if someone is physically assaulting you, you do have the right to defend yourself, regardless of whether or not it's your spouse, significant other, a random stranger, male, female, transgender. It does not matter. You have the right to defend yourself. And so I saw this and I read this, and I've never once interpreted this as sexual in nature. I read this as she hit him twice. He asked her not to. She was going to do it again. So he said, you know what? No. Bam. And, get on your horse and stop it. Now, I'm not a woman. And some people will say, well, that I lose the right to have interpretations because I'm not a woman and therefore I can't somehow relate or I don't understand these issues. I don't think that that's fair. I think that that's people taking advantage of interpretations and trying to control a narrative in a way that's not necessarily true. There's also this individual took affront to a theme in the books that a couple needs to have a dominant partner and a subordinate partner. What's wrong with that? What is wrong with that? People can have whatever type of relationship they want to have. Sometimes that might be equal. Sometimes that might be one being dominant and the other one not being, one person being passive. Not everyone needs to have or wants to have equality in that same sense. Some people are happy being submissive while other people are happy being dominant, and some relationships work with that dynamic. Who are we to judge whether or not someone's personal relationship is good or bad? So this idea that we need to paint every single relationship with the same brush of equality is absolutely ludicrous. I just don't buy into this. Um, it says here if one dominates in public, the other dominates in the bedroom and so on, but apparently they can't be equal in any one aspect of life. In fact, most Randland nations prescribe highly specialized roles for each sex. In Altera, only women can own ends and only men can own fishing boats. In Saldea, a woman is expected to marry a man who is stronger than he is. And how is that bad? These are different cultures that he has created who have different values and they do things differently. Why is that? Why are we not allowed to have different cultures? Can we point to the real world? There are different cultures around the world and they have different ways of doing things. And who are we to judge whether or not another culture is doing it rightly or wrongly? I think that we can definitely look towards human rights issues and use that as a baseline of saying, yeah, everyone should have equal rights. But it's up to the individuals in question when they get into a relationship if they want to have a relationship on equal footing or if they want to have a relationship where. Here's a good example. My own relationship with my wife, we have switched roles multiple times throughout our marriage, depending on the needs of the relationship, depending on where we are living and what our needs are. When we were dating, we were both working. When we moved in together, we were still both working. And then when we started our Airbnb in Cancun, I was working from home. Chris was working out. And so I became the de facto person who was in charge of everything domestic. Eventually, I don't remember how long it took, but 6 months in, Chris quit her job and came to manage full time the Airbnb. And then she became the person taking care of everything domestically while I worked from home in game dev and she managed the Airbnb. I managed all the bookings, she managed all the domestic side of things. And that's because that's just the roles that we wanted to fulfill. When we moved to Mexico City, we became 50-50 again because we were both working from home. Then she went out and started taking language classes. And I assumed the domestic role again because she was busy with classes and I worked from home. So it was very easy for me to cook, clean, do the dishes, so on and so forth, while she was studying and taking classes and earning her degree. We've moved into the homestead as of 6 months ago, and the roles have gone back to where she has taken over the domestic stuff, taking care of cooking, cleaning, grocery shopping. I help with some of those things, but not all the time because most of my time is spent in front of here. And not once in our relationship together, we've been together 12, 13 years now, not once have we ever gone to each other and said that you're sexist because you're dominating the relationship and you're dominating and I'm being forced to do these things while you dominate and I'm forced to be subservient. No, it's just we fluidly adjust as time goes on based on the needs of the relationship and the needs of where we are in life at that point in time. I think that when you try to force the issue, you end up with stuff like this where it's just a laundry list of, I feel, not realistic interpretations of what's going on here. This person is saying that Saldea is portrayed as a healthy nation with strong and happy women, and she says maybe it's because I'm not into S&M, but I can't imagine most women would be happy in a culture where she is supposed to be weaker at heart than her husband. Well, that's because you aren't from that culture, and different cultures have different viewpoints, different ways of belief. Terrence McKenna had a really good um, topic discussion. Culture is your operating system. And it's probably what from the 70s or 80s now. But it's this idea that your operating system is whatever culture you were brought up in. So you're not going to see your culture as being bad or backwards or anything else. In fact, you're going to view all the other cultures of the world as different and weird and bad because your culture feels like it's the only one that's right. Same thing goes for religion. Your religion and your culture are your operating system, and those are things you're taught from birth. Only in the first world do we have these ideas that certain ways of doing things are considered bad. And I'm not talking human rights issues here. I'm talking other things like this writer is assuming that Saldea is an S&M based culture because women are happy being weaker at heart than their husband. It Where are you getting that assumption from? I just don't get it. There's another discussion here over at SFF World talking about corporal punishment in the Wheel of Time. People are talking about, spanking, public caning, whipping, so on and so forth, and how it's fantasy and medieval, and fantasy and medieval corporal punishment was really a thing. Then there's this other topic of lady spanking, and this is on the Wheel of Time show, and they were asking about whether or not they're going to be showing the lady spanking in the show, because it says here, isn't it interesting that spanking is more controversial than killing in comparison with everything that was in Game of Thrones? Shouldn't some spanking nothing? Like, should not well. I suppose it would be seen exactly, but behind closed doors. Um, it said watching Aes Sedai spank someone really doesn't add anything for a series. It's gonna be short on time anyway. Some details need to be tossed aside, like Eladia being punished. So it's probably gonna be more effective to have someone walk by the room and hear screaming instead of seeing her get spanked. I agree. It says also, if you're going to show how the Sanshin torture channelers into obedience, spanking may not be the best thing to show. Some viewers, no matter what anyone says, will equate the two, so you don't need more than absolutely necessary. Very, very interesting. And some people said here that maybe Jordan did it to represent matriarchy. There's a lot to unpack here, and I really have a hard time believing how anyone could interpret corporal punishment as some sort of sexual fantasy. And this writer here of this article seems to have put a lot of S&M into Robert Jordan's works, which I don't think exist. The idea of someone being spanked, of a man spanking his woman, I'm not saying that that's the way to deal with something. But again, if you haven't ever seen Bill Burr's comedy segment on, he has this brilliant segment on what, like, you know, there's never a reason that a man should hit a woman. Come on, like there's, no reason at all. Like it's a very good comedy bit, with the understanding being, yeah, I mean, no one should hit each other regardless of their sex. But the idea that you should just let someone hit you without defending yourself is a little ludicrous. And that's something I think that we should be able to discuss as adults and have greater conversations about, without it automatically defaulting to it's somehow sexual in nature, or it's somehow sexist against women that a man is allowed to defend himself when Fail was clearly abusively beating Perrin, just to be abusive, and what, he's not supposed to defend himself? Food for thought. And I realize this was a controversial one today. Um, I'd love to hear thoughts. I would love to have a greater conversation on this, which is ultimately what I'd like to have, um, because I think it's worth talking about. Because as I get deeper into the series, I've seen a lot of comments cropping up about people who have issues with these things from Robert Jordan's work, and I'm like, what happened to the fandom? I read these books multiple times over the years, and I've been a huge part of the fandom up until the last time I reread these, maybe 10 years ago. And I never saw any of this commentary until now. And we're in this new era of, I don't want to use the W word. I really don't want to use the W word, but we are in a new world right now. Not that W word, the other W word. We are in a new existence now where people, want to prescribe that W word to everything and use that as some sort of a gauge to say that previous generations were wrong because of this, that, or the other, or previous authors were wrong because of this, that, or the other. And I'm just scratching my head going, when did we lose appreciation for the books and instead just come up with crazy interpretations of things? I will say that credit where credit is due. This individual said, um, Jordan may have some peculiar views about male and female relationships. I can forgive him for his eccentricities. He gave us enthralling books after all. And I find it inherent fun to catch a glimpse into the secret mind of an author. And she does mention, at least for in all fairness, that she said, A Crown of Swords, Matt was forced to be a sex slave or a sex pet. Said the only situation in the series where a woman dominated a man for reasons other than spite or making herself look better Queen Thailand just wanted some fun. Yeah, but in today's generation, in today's era, that's not cool. Like that's violating someone's rights, right? So why is it okay to do that to a man and yet wrong to do it to again, food for thought. Love to hear your thoughts. Like, subscribe, hit the bell icon if you like this. If you want to know more, stick around. If you want to support the channel, super easy. On premieres like this, do super chats and stickers. I'm down there in the chat with everybody as always every morning at 6 a.m. with these discussions. And of course, on live streams that are video games, you can also do super chats. Join as a member of the Adventurers Guild. We have 3 different tiers of membership. We do lots of private videos for our members. And after the fact, you can do super thanks. Don't forget the Patreon page if you want to find out what I'm working on with my wife and my brother, that world map behind me. It is a fantasy world with a lot of different cool stuff going on. Check that out. Until next time, everybody. Peace.